Okay, for this video, I'll be talking about the Harvard experiment video and the MRSA story about Brax that we talked about last week. First, I'm gonna start with just the overview of what was going on. These stories focus on different types of bacteria that can create a mutation and evolve to become immune to an antibiotic. First, in the Harvard film, they explain how you can put different levels of antibiotics in a petri dish and see how the bacteria reacts to it. And in the video, there was dye that was used to show how in the first one with zero antibiotic, the bacteria spread, and then you can see a small mutation branching off from that, which then slowly spreads in that level of antibiotic, creating bacteria that have built a mutation and are resistant to that antibiotic. You can see that there's like a level 0 where they spread and then it evolves slowly. There's like times 100 or whatever. That is to level antibiotics, and it continue to happen throughout the levels. The story that Brax has he had MRSA. It was an example of bacteria that made a mutation to be immune to the antibiotics that the doctors were trying to use to treat the MRSA. Like, they tried different antibiotics in the first, that they tried. They were resistant because MRSA, it's like they're resistant to antibiotics. It's resistant to the antibiotics, so they had to try some antibiotics, and his body refused that. It didn't. They did a test, and the MRSA was still there. And finally, the last antibiotic they used, after I tested him, he was MRSA free. So finally, the antibiotic was able to fight the bacteria. The bacteria that are specifically involved in MRSA is Staphylococcus aureus, which is a type of bacteria that's like located on the skin. That's the bacteria right now that we're talking about with this MRSA story. And for a project last week, 2 weeks ago, we were supposed to come up with some questions that I had myself about the articles, and I went through and I had to answer them using some sources. And my first one was what causes MRSA. The cause of MRSA is coming in contact with someone that is infected or that is a carrier with the bacteria. It can be in any contact, like sharing something that touches the infected skin, like using the same razor, using the same towel, like if it was infected, using the same towel. And another one is what is bacteria is involved with MRSA. And like I said that before. We talked about that, and is a bacteria that is located on the skin. That was a question that I was wondering. How does vancomycin? It's an antibiotic that was used first on Brax that was supposed to fight against the MRSA, but my later on question was it's supposed to fight against MRSA because that's like an antibiotic they use and it works for some people. But then later, my next question will be why is it resistant? So first on this one, how does it fight against it? Is a treatment? Using this antibiotic as a treatment was first found at a teaching hospital when this MRSA first started. It continued to be used because the antibiotic was able to fight the bacteria at the time. Now, like I said on my next question is why is MRSA resistant to this antibiotic now at times? And it's because there are cases that are vancomycin intermediate and vancomycin resistant, which these cases mean that the bacteria is resistant or intermediate to that. That is if they are given this antibiotic, it creates a selective pressure that creates an outgrowth of the bacteria. My next question was going back to the Harvard one. It was, what temperature does the petri dish have to remain for bacteria evolution? For the growth of a good and harmful bacteria, petri dish can be kept at 37 degrees Celsius. This is what I found out. I found all these sources. I found all this information. Those are the questions that I had. And like always, it's interesting to know how these antibiotics, like how they can be resistant to a illness, to a bacteria. The bacteria can be resistant to an antibiotic, but at times still fight it because of the different strain. But I used my resources were Evolution of Antibiotic Resistant Bacteria, Journal of Global Infectious Diseases. I used that for 2 of them. Journal of Clinical and Experimental Medicine, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and Center for Disease Control and Prevention. I used for 2 of those too. And that's my presentation.